a congressman for Minnesota's 1st District for 12 years, and now sharing his thoughts with us on the Al Travis Show. It's Congressman Gil Gutknecht.
We love having this cat on the program. He is Congressman Gil Gutknecht, like that man with a great voice says. He is a congressman here in the 1st District for a better part of 12 years, and we love having him on this program. I'm giving just enough time to get himself unmuted and ready to roll with us. Congressman, it is always a pleasure to have you on the show. You're still muted.
Okay, here I am.
There you are. How are you today, sir?
Well, I'm tardy.
No, only because you mentioned it. 5 seconds tardy is not going to hurt anybody. I am so happy to have you on. I'd like to, maybe I'm sharing more than you care to share. I know you're a religious guy. I really wanted your thoughts on President Trump coming out and saying he wants prayers in America. He wants, I think he called for 1 million prayers, this month for America to build America. I kind of like my president calling that out. Your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look at our history, Al, it is just absolutely replete with, statements of faith and prayers. I mean, let me just give one historical example. And I used to, when I would speak to high school kids, I would always, one of the things I would tell them, let me back up. I would always start with a question. What was the first official act by the first Congress when they first came together for the first time? What was their first official act?
I presume saying a prayer, right? I mean, they've done that ever since they started. I mean, since day one, don't they open it?
You're close. All right. You're close. They appointed a chaplain. That was their very first act. Okay. All right. Then they prayed. Okay. And it wasn't a perfunctory prayer. They prayed for an hour and a half.
Get out!
And people don't know this, that for over 100 years, every Sunday morning, the House chambers was used for prayer services. Every Sunday for over 100 years.
See, for folks who don't know, Congressman did not know what I was going to ask or want to talk about today, but this cat knows so much about American history. I love that. The prayer thing didn't shock me. You got to get a chaplain first, but an hour and a half of prayer and Sundays that was used. Where do people get the idea then, sir, the separation of church and state? Some people are howling that the president has no right to ask for prayers. I'm like, yeah, he can. This separation of church and state seems to be the thing some people hang their hat on. Where does that come from?
Well, it comes from a letter that was written by Thomas Jefferson. And Jefferson, he was asked in a letter whether or not he planned to have an official state religion. And the answer was no, because he believed there should be a separation between church and state. But by that, Jefferson and all the founders meant that there shouldn't be an official state religion, but that our government should not be immune from the important effect that religion and faith brings. Let me just add one other thing about the founding. I mean, our very first Speaker of the House was a gentleman by the name of Muhlenberg, who was an ordained minister. So, I mean, if you walk through the Capitol, I mean, many people don't know that there's actually a chapel inside the U.S. Capitol building. And virtually every president since the Capitol was finished, before they walk out to take the oath of office, is invited to go into the chapel and pray. One of the last things that the president-elect does is go into the House chapel and prays. And in fact, in that chapel, there's a stained glass window. And it's got a sort of a portrait of George Washington praying. So, from the very beginning, everything about our government, and in fact, our one of the most important documents that Jefferson ever wrote, the Declaration of Independence, if you think about it, it was, it clarified that all of our rights that are unalienable came from Almighty God. And so when Trump says, hey, it's time we get back to some of those basic principles and recognize that we are one nation under God and that our rights do not come from government, despite what the senator from Virginia thinks.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was the most ridiculous ignorant comment I think I've had that a U.S. senator has made in my lifetime.
Yeah. So when Trump does these things, and he's generally on an 80-20 issue, he takes the 80 side and makes the other side look pretty tough for that. But I don't think prayer is an 80-20 issue. It bothers me to say this, but it's probably 50-50. I, for one, am very happy that that's the way he's going, and I hope he continues to push it, bring it up on an average so that it becomes something we can all talk about. Would you say it's an 80-20 issue or a 50-50 issue? That people are okay with prayers?
I think it's probably somewhere in between.
Okay.
I think there are a lot of people who are not necessarily people of faith, but they would much rather deal with people who are of faith.
Oh,
and I think I think when people vote, even if there's a big group of people, I think, in the United States who don't necessarily go to church, but they do believe there's something bigger than themselves, that they believe that this entire universe, this entire planet, this beautiful place, this Garden of Eden that we live in, this is not an accident. And so when they choose their leaders, they would rather pick people who are of strong moral conviction and that really believe that there is a power greater than government.
Well, there is something, especially in the line of work of politics, if you know that person's religious background, you are already filling in a lot of blanks of things they will or will not do. If you don't have any of that, there is no moral right and wrong with someone, it's much harder to deal with as far as just kind of come up with things you can agree on. I've got to go to break, Congressman, if you're all right with it. What I'd like to talk about on the other side, just give you a heads up now, Trump goes into Washington, D.C., brings in the National Guard. The world goes in an uproar, except for people in Washington, D.C. Evidently, they haven't got, people don't even spit their gum out on the sidewalk anymore. This place is cleaned up. He wants to help these other spots out across the country, and he's having just a fit. People are having a fit about it. I want to talk with you about whether it has the ability to do it and what's going on. Why would anybody not want their streets cleaned? We'll be back after this with Congressman Gil Gutknecht.
Think about it. A famous politician once said, "You're entitled to your opinion, but you are not entitled to your own facts." But in a world full of AI and fake news, where can Minnesotans find the facts? Center of the American Experiment is Minnesota's go-to source for fact-based analysis and common sense solutions for taxes, energy, public safety, and our kids' education. Visit AmericanExperiment.org for more information. Think About It is brought to you by Center of the American Experiment, Minnesota's think tank.
You need a friend at the Capitol who knows how to get things done.
And you're in luck, because that's exactly who we are, your friends at the Capitol, and we deliver results.
At Momentum Advocacy, we bring decades of experience in lobbying, public affairs, and crisis communications.
From local nonprofits to national corporations, we help you move policy, manage your media, and make your voice heard.
We're not just seasoned pros, we're essential partners.
Momentum Advocacy, your friends at the Capitol. Learn more at momentum-advocacy.com.
as in alligator. L also in alligator. But it's not alligator. It's the Al Travis Show.
So lucky to have him on the program. He's Congressman Gil Gutknecht. Congressman, so we went into break. Trump goes into Washington, D.C., brings in the National Guard to clean up the city. I get it, it's a federal land. It's not in a state, so not as much pushback. However, there was pushback, which is crazy to me. But within 2-3 weeks, this city is now cleaned up, running fine. Crime is down. Why would, and I get the federal state thing, why would states not want the help?
I don't know. I mean, seriously, that's sort of an unanswerable. And, Trump now, from a political standpoint, I think he has these major cities, right where he wants them. Because if they refuse federal help and the crime rate remains dangerously high, he's got the example from the city of Washington, D.C., that, additional forces on the streets make an enormous difference. And so the mayors have to decide, are you going to really resist, the help from the National Guard? But let me go back to, people ask, well, how can the president essentially command the National Guard? Yeah. Well, they have to understand the relationship between the federal government, the U.S. Army, the Defense Department, or the Department of War, whatever we're going to call it today. When we created the National Guard, people don't realize the federal government picks up the lion's share of the cost of the National Guard. And in return, the governor of each state essentially is the commander-in-chief of the National Guard for their state. Mm-hmm. But the president reserves the right to call up those forces whenever there is some kind of an emergency. Mm-hmm. Now, what this will come down to, I think, and it probably will be tried all the way to the Supreme Court, is whether or not the president has the power to declare an emergency because of a high crime rate in Chicago, because there were 53 shootings in one weekend in Chicago. Is that enough to say this is an emergency and the president does retain the power to declare an emergency and nationalize the Illinois National Guard to move in to back up the police force in Chicago? So that's an open question. I'm not sure I know the answer to that.
But back to, I find it so hard to believe. There isn't a program the federal government's got that states don't line up to get their fair share, right? Give us some money, give us some help. How in the world is this not the same thing? You in Chicago will get the National Guard in there for 2-3 weeks, whatever it takes, to stop the 54 shootings on a weekend, 7 dead. To stand up and say, no, we don't need your help, the proof is in the pudding. I just don't see the want when that same city will ask for every handout they can get from the federal government.
Well, I think it probably has more to do with ego. I mean, if you're Governor Pritzker or if you're the mayor of Chicago, essentially asking or allowing the National Guard and federal forces to move in to help you police your streets is an acknowledgement that we have failed and that we can't do our job. And I think from an ego standpoint, that's a very hard thing for a mayor or a governor to admit.
Right, that's fair enough. A couple of quick side notes. You brought up the Department of War. What do you think of him? These are not big items, ladies and gentlemen. Department of War, do you like it? I like the sound of it.
You know what? I really don't have an opinion about that. I have an opinion about almost everything, but that's not one of them. I just wish we'd settle on a term because it seems to me that we've sort of bounced back and forth, particularly in Congress. It used to be the Armed Services Committee forever, and then they've kind of changed that, and I don't know, whatever.
Okay. And again, not the biggest thing in the world. This next one, what were your thoughts when you saw Trump blow up that ship out in the ocean that supposedly had 11, what do you call it? Trey Alexandras, whatever they call them, folks selling narco terrorists. What were your thoughts on that? I at first thought it was in our waters. Now I'm under the impression it's in international waters, but he calls them a terrorist group. Your thoughts on blowing these folks out of the water, literally?
Well, I mean, my thought is don't mess with the United States Navy. I mean, he was sending a message that, the idea that we will just be passive and allow these people to import, literally millions of tons, maybe millions isn't right, but tons and tons of these deadly drugs into our country and not take action. I mean, you have to always go back to, and this is where I compare him to Teddy Roosevelt. I mean, this guy is a man of action. He doesn't wait. I mean, I used the example in Washington, D.C. that, he nationalized the National Guard for Washington, D.C. to stop crime. I mean, it wasn't like a governor we have in Minnesota that waits until the third precinct is burning down. So this is a guy who's not going to wait around for something bad to happen. He's going to take action to stop it.
I love that. I don't disagree with you at all. Also, you've got to think, if you're in that group that does this sort of operation, next time the big boss man says, get in the boat, we're going to send another one, that last shipment didn't make it, you might think twice about getting in the boat.
Well, that's right. And,
life choices.
And, what we did with the Mexican cartels, and we blew up that, I don't know what you call it, bakery where they were putting together drugs. We are sending messages. I should say Trump is sending messages to the narco terrorists that there is a new sheriff in town, and we're not going to wait for you. We're prepared to strike you wherever you are.
It's an interesting switch, and maybe this will become the Trump doctrine, right? Interesting switch in how America is handling all of that. One last thing, and it's all personal for me. I don't know where I stood with the big, beautiful bill. I really would like this Congress to start doing the 12 appropriations bill as 12 separate bills. Let's get back to the business of doing business the way we used to. Do you believe they'll do that, sir, between now and the end of the year? They got the big, beautiful bill done. Do you hear anything being moved on any of that?
No, and that is both a surprise and a disappointment. I agree with you. I mean, we need to get back to regular order. The House has to lead. The House has to pass its 12 appropriation bills. And I don't know whether they're going to get that done. And if you look at the timetable, it's just ridiculous that they don't have that done yet.
Is this a fear of the 26 elections? They don't want to get into that business. Maybe if we get, the Republicans win more seats, they'll give it a shot before Trump is out. Or is this, we've been doing it for 20 years, this is the way we do business now?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah. Okay.
Speaker Johnson, I think he's a wonderful guy. I think he's brilliant, but I think he's a bit timid. And I think it's easy to become timid if you're a member of the House right now, because Trump has demonstrated he'll take the arrows. So a lot of those guys, I think they're just, laying in the tall grass. And they found that it's much easier. And frankly, a lot of the more senior members have recognized that it makes their job a whole lot easier. Plus, they can sneak a lot of junk in the trunk in these big omnibus bills, and that's what's going to happen. We'll probably get down to right before Christmas, and they'll pass a bill that's 3,500 pages, and there are going to be all kinds of little things in there for the home districts of the chairman of some of the big committees and subcommittees.
How much will that move the needle, though? Because I sit here, you have momentum, you got Trump filling all his promises up. I would think the right side would be, yeah, but you're even looking at me saying, but you're not doing all you promised. Get back to regular. I'm looking for that stuff financially to get back under control, the Elon Musk stuff. Is this going to sway people even from his side to say, I can't stomach it anymore? I want new blood in there.
Well, yeah, I think that's the risk that they take. And the real risk is that people will stay home. Okay. Yeah. What they really need to do, and what Trump demonstrated in the last election, and even the post-election polls demonstrated that, if more people would have voted, Trump would have won even bigger. Okay. What that says is that silent majority out there that may or may not vote are voters that the Republicans desperately need. And if those people say there's really not a nickel's worth of difference between the two sides, and they just stay home next November, it could be a very difficult year for Republicans in Congress. So I agree with you. I think they've got to demonstrate that they've got the same kind of courage that Donald Trump does.
There you go, sir. I've run out of time. I appreciate you being on the program. Let's do it again in a couple of weeks.
Hopefully I'll be on time.
All right, Congressman Gil Gutknecht on the Al Travis Show.